In this video, we're going to talk about the Material Editor. So we've seen how to apply materials to our objects in the viewport. Now we're going to go ahead and open it up. So go to the content browser and double click on your material. That'll open up the Material Editor. So I'm going to dock this in the main window just so that we have lots of space here so that you can see in the recording. I'll be able to jump back and forth pretty easily between the regular Unreal Editor viewport and the Material Editor. So to navigate the Material Editor is really easy. Click and hold the right mouse button and drag, and you can pan around. You can also zoom in and out by using your mouse scrolling wheel, which is pretty easy. We can also select different nodes. So for example, we can just go ahead and click on a node. That's going to select it for you. Once it's selected, you can just left click and drag it around and move it around wherever you need to. You can also select multiple nodes at the same time. Just drag a selection around the nodes you want selected, and that'll go ahead and select multiple nodes. You can also click on a node, hold down the control key, and then select any other nodes you want to select. You can also use shift for that, by the way. You can also deselect with the control key, so you can select whatever you need to. So I'm going to create a node here real quick, and to connect nodes with each other, you just click on the pin and drag out with the left mouse button. Then just drag this little white string to any piece of data you want to connect to, which is an input on another node, in this case the main material node. So I could connect that node to the emissive color. Then I can click and drag this node around, and you're going to see that string follow the nodes around, and that's going to show you that you have an established connection between the two data inputs and outputs of those nodes. To disconnect, just hold down Alt and click on the little pin. That'll sever the connection. You can also hit the delete key to get rid of a node permanently from your editor. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. So up here's the main toolbar. I'm going to talk about this a little bit. And on the far left, we'll start off there, is the save button, and that pretty much goes without saying. It's going to save your work. So whenever you work on a material and you're spending a couple of hours here setting something up, you want to make sure you're constantly saving, just to be on the safe side. Then you've got the Find in Content Browser, which is a pretty standard button in most of the editors and stuff like that inside of Unreal. That'll take you to the Content Browser and highlight the material that we're currently editing. So next we have the Apply button. And the way the Apply button works is pretty simple. Whenever we make changes to the material shader network, the Apply button is going to become active. So let me jump in here in the viewport. We can see I've got my little sphere with checkerboard texture on it. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to change that up. So let me create a color node over here, a constant 3, and I'll show you later on how to create this stuff. Let's not worry about how to create it for the moment. So I'm going to take this little pin here, and I'm going to connect that to the base color. And another way I can do that is by right clicking on the pin, and I got a shortcut here. I can just quickly go to connect to base color, and it's going to automatically connect the string from the color node to the base color of the material node, and it's going to update over here in the preview window on the upper left. Now if I go back to the viewport, you'll notice nothing's happened. My material still looks exactly the same. We have to click this little Apply button here with a green check mark. Once we do that, it's going to apply the material changes in Unreal. So we can see it pink over here in the preview window, and we can also see the Apply button is grayed out. It's grayed out when there's no changes to apply. If you've made changes to the material, like changed a color or a number, anything like that, that'll turn green, and you can click it. And if I jump back to the viewport, you can see that the changes have in fact been applied to the material. So now it looks all pink and totally different from before. Then we have the Home button. If we click on that, our little view here focuses on the main material node. This is the material node that everything connects to for the actual material. Then we've got the Cleanup button. Let me just create a bunch of nodes here. And again, don't worry about how I'm creating these nodes. I just want to show you the main toolbar. So we've got all these nodes that are not connected to anything. These nodes that are just free floating can be deleted easily by hitting the Cleanup button. So any nodes that are not connected to the main material node will be deleted. So you want to be careful about that, because you might end up getting rid of something you need, which is actually what I did right here. I got rid of my checkerboard texture and its corresponding texture coordinate node by clicking on the Cleanup button. So I'm going to hit Control Z to undo. I'm going to delete these guys by selecting them and hitting the delete key. And I'm going to go ahead and probably just reconnect this texture node to the base color. But first I'll create a panner node, and again, don't worry about how I'm creating the panner node and all this stuff. I just want to show you the basics in this video. I'm just going to connect the texture coordinate node to the coordinate input of the panner node. Then I'm going to connect the output of the panner into the UV's input of the texture sample node. And then I'm going to take the texture sample node and connect that to the base color with the right click menu, which is faster. Okay, so again, don't worry about how I created that. I'm going to select the panner node, and in the details panel I'm going to change the speed in the X to 0.5, and that's going to make my texture pan on the UVs, which creates the illusion of the texture or the object spinning in a circle. So I'm going to click on live nodes, and then I'm going to hit live update, and now you notice that there's some stuff going on. When you use the live update and the live nodes buttons together, you can get anything that is moving or doing any kinds of operations like this will become live, and you'll be able to see it right here inside of the Unreal Editor Material Editor. And if I apply the changes and jump back to that viewport, you can see that the changes have in fact been propagated to the material in Unreal. So I'm going to set the speed back to 0. I don't want to get you hypnotized or anything like that. So the next button is the stats button. This is usually on by default. If I turn that on, you'll see this yellow text on the top left of the editor. And this is information for more advanced users. It basically tells you your pixel and your vertex shader instructions. And that's really important to know. Once you become more advanced with Unreal, you'll start to understand what these numbers mean. Basically, the more instruction counts you have, the more expensive your shader network on your material is to render. If we click on the mobile stats, we'll get more yellow text, and this stuff is just pertinent to mobile game development. So if you're making stuff for Android or iOS, it's important information to keep note of if you want to make sure your game is optimized. Then up here we have a search field. If I start to type in a name of something, if it finds anything, it's going to go ahead and select it, and it's going to focus the view on that node. So when you have a shader network for a material that's 150 nodes big, it might be a little bit difficult to just navigate and try to find the nodes you need. So if you remember you have a node with a certain name, you can just start searching for the name and make things easier for yourself. Now on the top left we have the little preview window, which you've probably already noticed what it does, but there's a few buttons here that can be pretty helpful. If you left click and drag, you can rotate. If you right click and drag, you can zoom in and out. And then on the top here we have these different buttons that change the primitive shape of the little preview objects. So we've got a cylinder, sphere, polyplane, we've got a cube. So it depends on what you want to see. We also have this little teapot icon. If I click on it, Unreal is going to say, hey, you don't have anything selected. I'm not sure what you're trying to do. So what Unreal wants us to do, it wants us to go into the content browser, select the static mesh, highlight it, and then we can plug it into the preview window. So I'm just going to dig in here. I'm in the shooter game example from Epic Games, and what I'm doing is I'm just going to find a static mesh here I can use. Once I have one selected, I'll jump back into the Material Editor, click on the little teapot icon again. Now that Unreal has something selected, it'll go ahead and pop that in there. So if you had a material for, say, an M16 rifle, it's probably not going to look good on a sphere. So if you have an M16 rifle mesh, you can plug it in there and see what it looks like. We've also got a grid we can turn it on and off, and we've also got a little stopwatch icon on the far right. This turns on the real-time preview, so if I go ahead and give this thing a little bit of movement with the panner node, we can see that if I turn off the real-time view, it won't move anymore. If I turn real-time back on, I'll be able to preview the movement and stuff like that. So that could be extremely useful, especially if you're doing some kind of hologram shader with like crazy animation that you've done in another program like After Effects or something. You'll be able to see it right there in real time. So I'm going to set that speed back down to 0, and I'll probably just end the video here, and there's still a lot more to talk about, and we'll go over to other stuff in the next videos.